about the new features, what's possible. So please give a round of applause for Sebastian.
Okay, so the 4th of July was a special day. We launched Terrible 2 as a follow-up of Terrible 1. And well, the audience here probably all know about Terrible, but I'll just give a short introduction. So what is Terrible? Terrible is a service that we host at Sanoma, and basically we provide teams with a tool to manage the infrastructure. So Terrible is used to deploy instances, to build CloudFront distributions, to do ELBs, set up databases and everything. And we call it Terrible because it's a combination of Terraform and Ansible, and it's used to do provisioning of the cloud and server configuration. The whole setup with Terrible 1, as you know it, it's a YAML file. It's basically a layer, a template layer on top of Terraform, it was making it possible for us to quickly migrate our services to AWS. But we started running into issues since people were asking, well, is this feature available, or can we use this product? And since we had the template wrapper on top of it, we would have to write loads and loads of templates and make template changes all over Terraform, and yeah, we just couldn't maintain it. So we decided to move on to Terrible 2. Like Terrible 1, Terrible 2 is still written in Go. The problem with Terrible 1 is that we couldn't share the development of templates because it was in Go, and most programmers here are Python experts, not Go experts. So it was difficult to share the burden. So what we did, we removed the template layer on top of Terraform, and we made it basically built Terraform modules. So just write Terraform code instead of a template language on top. So we pulled Terrible and Terraform more apart. And so what we're doing now is just like with the Sanoma Ansible roles, that we have a set of common roles that everybody or all the developers can work on. We want to make a set of Terraform modules that all developers can work on as well. So you don't have to learn Go anymore. You just learn how Terraform works. You learn how the Terraform code fits together. And you can immediately contribute to Terraform or write your own module or build a service on top of different modules. So Terrible, for Terrible 1, we had things like Terrible job and commands. I just wanted to spend some time with this presentation to give you an idea how Terrible 2 will work. So to get started, you need a client, just like the Terrible job client with Terrible 1. And we've got Linux, Darwin, Windows, and for the Mac users, you can also brew install Terrible. And for Terrible 1, we had a key that you needed to have on your system. With Terrible version 2, we have the AD login. So if you have an AD account, you will be able to log in into Terrible 2. Common mistake we already noticed is that people try to log in with their email address. So just your initial and your last name. That's the AD account, and you can use that to log in. And then to see what is available, you can use Terrible Inspect Universe, and it will give you an overview of all the clusters that are available and all the accounts that we've got available. But you can also do Terrible Inspect Cluster Operations, and you will see all the products for your cluster, or in this case, operations. And you will see what kind of hotkeys there are available, what kind of accounts you've got available. Because with Terrible 2, it will be possible to deploy across accounts. So not just in the Sanoma NL accounts, but if you've got separate accounts, you can also deploy in those accounts. But of course, the big thing when you're going to start using it is the first thing you're going to ask yourself after you have logged in is how can I start using Terrible 2? I've got a new product. For now, we're not converting products yet, but just creating new ones. So if you want to start using it, you need a cluster admin. And a cluster admin is like with Terrible 1, the person in charge of creating products and adding users to products. So you're going to need to ask your cluster admin to create a product. And there you can see Terrible admin create product core services, really good new product it would be. And that will create a product. With Terrible 2, we're letting go of the difference between environments and deployments. So you would just have to create an environment, like test or staging or sandbox. We got some tighter rules about naming conventions there. But when you create your product, the next step will be to create an environment. So in most cases, it will just be test or staging. And your cluster admin will be able to define that for you. And then the last thing the cluster admin needs to do is to give you access to that product. So, and unlike with Terrible 1, we can just assign users to products. We can't assign the user to a complete cluster. So it's still pretty simple, I think. Project structure, that changes a bit. We still have the difference between Ansible and Terraform. If you take a look at the Terraform folder, you split it up in your different environments. So you would have a test folder, production folder, whatever folder. And then within the Terraform folder, it's a basic setup that you also see in normal Terraform projects. So you will have a main, an outputs, and a variables. In the variables, you put all the stuff that you want to pass on to the main. And in the outputs, you define what kind of output you want, like the name of the bucket you are creating, or the name of the user that you are creating, the IAM user, the output of the password. And in main, you're tying all kinds of Terraform modules together. So using the Terraform modules, just let me go back. So the main TF is really your most important file in your project. And if you look at the main TF, what you will see is things like this, module instance, and it gives you a repository on source. So that's basically a collection of modules that we've already written, like we've got a module for EC2, we've got one for RDS, for CloudFront, for S3 buckets, like all the standard stuff you are using already. We have modules available for those. And the idea is that we take away the complexity in the module. So for example, for an RDS, it's like setting up the RDS, but also creating users. We put it all in one module, and we pass on some parameters within there, and the things we don't define, it just tries to use same defaults. So it will be really easy to get something up and running, even if you don't know a lot of Terraform code. And what you can do is just define your project as a set of modules. So you can say, I want instances, and you can tie those to your load balancer. You can tie an RDS to it. And basically, if you run it, it will set up your whole infrastructure. We have a Bootstrap project available. This is part of the Bootstrap project, which shows you how everything fits together. For example, the stuff that you put into the outputs TF, you can pass on to Ansible, and you can use in your Ansible code. So what does a module look like? I already explained a bit. We take away the complexity as much as possible. And so you can see here, this is well, the instance EC2 module, and there's a lot of stuff going on that you don't really have to know about. You can, of course, you can check out these modules in source, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the hood, going on that you don't need to know about. But if there's stuff missing, it's quite easy to make a pull request for it. There are some tricks with Terraform code, like you can't do simple if-then-else statements, and loops aren't that easy. You need counts. There's some good documentation on that as well. It takes a little bit of time to get used to that. It's like really basic stuff that you can't do, that you have to get used to working around. But other than that, it's pretty easy to write. So now you've got a product. You did all your you put your stuff in main. You checked out the modules. So and now you want to deploy your product. So how does that work? Well, in Terrible 2, we've got the following development cycle. First, you do a pre-flight. You've got some validation of your Terraform code, but we'll also be looking at your Ansible code. Are you like pinning the Sanoma common module? Well, that's then you're flagged. Are you using external Ansible stuff without pinning? You're flagged. Are you using a really big instance for your project? That means you're flagged. So there's going to be a number of flags, and some of them are going to be blocking, and some of them are just going to be reports. So if you pass the pre-flight, the next thing is going to be a plan. It executes Terraform plan. So what Terraform plan does, it basically goes through your code and works out what kind of infrastructure needs to be created, in which order, how things tie together, everything. And it will come back saying, with a plan file saying, if you're going to launch me, I'm going to create all this stuff here. And well, you will be able to check that in your client. Once you've done the plan, we build in a stage acknowledge, because the whole idea is that a single for production environments, then we make it a bit safer so that you can't say, well, I'm going to apply this, and we have a single developer who can mess up a production environment or delete stuff from a production environment. So if it's something that needs to be checked by a number of people, when creating the product, you can say, well, for production environments, I want 3 acknowledgements before I'll make any changes. So if you then do a plan, and you will need to have the acknowledgements first before you can do the apply. Well, if everything has been acknowledged, you can do an apply, and it will run your plan and make all the changes in the infrastructure. And then after it's been set up, you can do an Ansible run after that, and yeah, it will just do the Ansible partitioning. So first step is pre-flight. Again, it's really a simple command, Terrible pre-flight. This format cluster name, product name, environment name is basically a standard that you will get used to quite easily. And you have to pass on the commit hash. You can do easily with this. You will need to, after I think 30 minutes, you will need to log in again with your AD passwords, and it will create a snapshot file, will validate the code and everything, do the checks. The nice thing is, because it created a snapshot file, if you got rid of your branch for some reason, which happened with Terrible 1 a number of times, you will still be able to deploy that, because we had a number of issues with that before. Next thing is you do a plan with your pass, and you'll get a plan ID, cut out a lot of stuff from here, but basically it will show you what it will create, what it will destroy, and it will come back with a plan. Then you've got the acknowledgements. They're optional, so if you're in a test environment, you can just say, okay, I'm going to do this, but for production, it shouldn't be optional. And so you can acknowledge it. And then the next step is going to be the apply, which is usually a long, a lot of output. So you specify the plan idea, which is a shared plan idea of all of the projects, of course. And once you're done with that, you do the Ansible command, which is going to be another lot of output. And then you've got the stuff provisioned. If I go back to the development cycle, so the way it basically works is you make changes, you commit those changes to your remote repository, because Terrible is looking at the remote repository. So you have to push to the origin, and then you can do the Terrible plan. It will get the stuff from the remote, look at the changes, you can plan, and then you can apply, and then you do the Ansible one. But for now, might change in the future, but for now, suppose you want to change some Ansible code, you'll have to go through the full cycle again for now. So you will have to do another push of your code to the remote, do another plan, apply, just to make sure that the state is going to be consistent. Because if you change your code in Ansible, and it would depend upon some Terraform changes that are expected, you would really have to bring your environment in line with what you want to do with Ansible. So that's why it's a full run. But it's important to remember that you always need to push your code to the remote. But this is basically it. It's a couple of commands, and you'll be up and running. That's about all I have to say about this. Yeah.
So if you have no number of users who must acknowledge, then you can just do the plan and apply yourself.
Yeah.
That's good. You can't, of course, apply someone else's plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. You can.
So it's ready for use. It's officially launched. So if you've got new products, if you've got new products, go ahead. Use Terrible too, because we've got some nice modules there and some good stuff as well. You'll be able to share data sources as well, which means you can set up one RDS that is used by different projects, so we'll be saving money, loads of money, I think. So go ahead and use it as soon as possible. For the existing products, we're still working on a conversion tool, and we'll let you know about that later.
Also, the code is much friendlier. The Go code is much friendlier, so you can also contribute yourself if you want to add a feature and send a pull request to Sebastian or Gert-Jan. So.
Any other questions? No?
Who's going to use it tomorrow?